All right, so I had some questions on how I did my cut lines for this. Now, this is really messy. The reason for this is because I think I had a bad tube of DevCon. I think it sat on the shelf too long, and when I tried to stick this together, the DevCon just would not bond the plastics together. So I've got to go ahead and cut this out, sand this down again a little bit, get the DevCon out of there, put in fresh DevCon that I just got from the store. Hopefully that'll all work out, but this is okay because this gives me a chance to go over how the cut lines for this work because I did have some requests. So this Hammershot has been fully gutted, so all of the stuff inside has been drilled out, tapped out, and so this is fully separate. You can separate this completely. I'm doing that because I'm going to be painting this, but the Hammershot is actually pretty easy. There's just two. Obviously, we're just taking the body of the Hammershot and the handle of a rough cut, and we're slapping them on together. I considered, per the kind of idea of doing it more like this, so it would be more like a, angled pistol, much like looser, kind of like how you hold a rough cut. Considered that, but there's two problems with it. Primarily, it makes the trigger pull really, really long because you're adding extra distance. So the distance between the edge of the trigger and where your hand is gets a little uncomfortably long. And then most importantly, the biggest difference is that it changes the angle of the priming mechanism, the actual trigger, or the spring system inside of the Hammershot. That is a fixed angle. It's in its own housing. You can't really see it in this bag of junk that I've got. Hold on, I'll pull it out. All right, so I pulled this out and flipped it over so it's a little easier to see. This is obviously a fixed angle, right? The angle here is fixed, and it's fixed to fit, right, a standard Hammershot. You can imagine it fitting into a standard Hammershot pretty much exactly like that. So what we're trying to do is mirror that completely, because if I changed this and made this more angular, then I would have to, start moving this. And as Hawkeye pointed out, I might end up having to change this pivot. It would just be a lot more difficult. So what I opted for is keeping the same kind of handle orientation, and so that way I don't have to change the orientation of this guide. Now I will probably want to put in some pins inside, some locator pins, so that this has some nice stability. I could reinforce with epoxy putty, but as was pointed out, this part is going to be taking strain and moving and probably flexing a little bit as it takes the spring load, and epoxy putty might crack or whatever. So the cuts for this are actually super, super simple. On the Hammershot side, as you can probably see, what you end up doing is actually just cutting. You end up cutting right along where the handle exists. So you've got this body line, and I just followed it straight through, and then cleaned it up with some sanding. So it's maybe a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's pretty much following this exact body line. Now, as a downside, you do lose all of the screws here, and you lose all of the locating pins here and here. That is acceptable losses. I think that you can recover from that pretty easily, and then you get a nice. It will accept this rough cut handle that has been cut down. I made a little bit too much of a judicious cut there, and then in sanding I accidentally buzzed down a bit on the inside. Whoops! I can repair all of that with epoxy putty without any real issue. The cut lines themselves, as you can see, are in on the trigger well. I don't have a stock rough cut here, but you can see it's on the ridge of the trigger well. And then you also have to cut down the inside of the trigger well to make room. So the parts that close this gap here need to be pulled out so that this thing will accept the width of the Hammershot body. Where I made a mistake is I took that down a little bit too much and tapered that in. This taper could be a lot higher. It could be almost even. So be a little bit careful here. I took way too much out. Nothing I can't fix with epoxy putty, but if you're doing this yourself, definitely do that. Other than that, I just followed some of the body lines that were on the rough cut. For the most part, you get this kind of curve that when it comes in, it fits in quite nicely. I will have to do some patching with Apoxie Sculpt, but that's no big deal. On the inside, this bottom part, you have to pull these two two screw pins out. Got all of the trigger retention from the rough cut. That's no big deal. That's not surprising. What is of note is you will be pulling out a screw boss. The screw boss right here does have to go. It's in the way. So that does have to get pulled out. Jeez, I can't put these together with through the camera. I don't have enough depth perception. There we go. So this screw boss you do miss, I'll be able to epoxy putty or Apoxie Sculpt right over that and clean it up. No big deal. And then on the other side, on here, again, trigger retention, and then the two locating pins right there and there need to just get totally gutted. Other than that, this is pretty simple. If you can see here, this is kind of a rough mock-up of what it looks like in the end. Oops, this is backwards. But you can see how this will totally fit together quite nicely. Something about like that-ish. And then when you get it into the shell, you can kind of see, if we use one side, you can see how it fits in quite nicely. You have plenty of bonding area. There will be some seams that will most likely get almost entirely covered by DevCon, but then can definitely be patched over and sanded up with Apoxie Sculpt. And overall, you get a very, very nice blaster. The advantages to this are you have a lot more handle space, obviously, because this is just a bigger handle. And I think the big issue is that this thing, the rough cut handle, naturally takes paint a little bit better than the Hammershot handle. This bandage wrap is kind of annoying to paint, to really get a good color, like to make the color palette match with this. You're shoehorned into things. This back strap wants to be silver because it looks metallic, like the decaling on it makes it look kind of metallic. And then this, of course, the front is the front grip here is a wood grain. And so this is the problem with this handle, is it shoehorns you into what you can do in terms of paint and aesthetics. It really dictates it to you. You have to do something with it, and it's kind of self-explanatory what it is. It's harder to change. This is much more of a blank canvas. So I'm gonna, you could very easily do an inset of color and then a detail color, and then, I mean, it's very much more paint by numbers on this thing, where you can see where the fields of color can be and then paint them accordingly. So I think it provides a much nicer kind of smooth aesthetic. It doesn't have the same kind of Zombieland styling, but it still has enough of the Zombieland styling that I like. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. I'm going to DevCon it up, get it epoxied, and I'll take some pictures, and there will be a build log up for this for sure, because this is the start of my companion sidearm Eidolon, so it'll be very similar in styling to that. So, alrighty, 8 minutes. Geez, that took longer to explain than I thought.